sorry. I was just spinning around the room in one of my favorite wrap skirts. Because guess what? We're gonna make it today. On today's Real Life Friday video, you heard right. We are going to whip out the sewing machine and make a I'm assuming it's going to be easy. I've never made a wrap skirt before, but I own two and I wear them all the time. I looked at them and they don't seem that hard. So if you have a sewing machine and you know how to sew a straight line, this video is gonna be for you because these wrap skirts are so easy and perfect for summer. Now, if you don't own a sewing machine, don't be sad. Maybe a friend has a sewing machine you can borrow. Maybe your mom, your grandma, your neighbor. Even if you've never used a sewing machine before, it's literally straight line sewing. So if you can get your hands on a sewing machine, you can get your hands on making this wrap skirt for summer. I'm telling you, it's gonna be easy. I'm not a sewer. I'm totally self-taught. I just wanted a sewing machine and I asked for one for Christmas and I got it and then I just started sewing. Straight line sewing, it's not that difficult. If I can do it, you can do it. So run on over to the fabric store, pick yourself up some fabric, get on home, get your sewing machine, and let's get to sewing. So, like I mentioned in the intro, this wrap skirt is one of my favorite skirts. And I have two actually. I have this one and I have this one. If I had to guess, this is 15 years old. I purchased this while on a work trip in Hawaii, and I remember it wasn't cheap. I want to say this was like 75, maybe more. They claim it's like one of those like 10-in-1s where you could wear it as a skirt, but there's another layer that you could like pull up here and tie around, and now you have a strapless dress. I never tried any of the other ways. I just always wore it as a wrap skirt. And then maybe like 5 years ago when I was in Mexico, I found this one. This one was a little cheaper, probably like 50 bucks maybe, but still pretty expensive. I thought, since I love them so much, I might as well try to make one. Now, I've never made a wrap skirt before, but I'm pretty confident in my straight line sewing. I've seen those sewing channels before where they're like, if you want to sew a skirt, use the skirt that you like as a pattern. So I was like, why not do this for this? Because when I lay this out, it just looks like a giant rectangle of fabric with like a ribbony waistband to it. I mean, how hard can that be? I don't think it's gonna be that hard. This one has one little buttonhole to slide your ribbon waistband through. This one has three. You know, maybe you feel like you gained a little weight. Maybe you're feeling a little bloated. You could put it in a looser buttonhole. Or if you're feeling extra skinny one day, maybe you put it through the tightest buttonhole. So I want to incorporate 3 buttonholes into this wrap skirt. That's what we're gonna try to do. Although I don't really remember how to make a buttonhole, but again, I'm sure we could figure it out. So your first order of business when wanting to make this so easy wrap skirt, now I say that loosely because again, I've never made one. I just think it's gonna be so easy. But like I said, first step, you gotta pick your fabric. Now, we don't have a lot of fabric stores in this town. It's like pretty much Joann's. And sadly, my Joann's doesn't even have that great of a fabric selection. Everything in the whole store is freaking fleece, for Pete's sakes. What you wanna look for, obviously, is something with some flowiness, some, you know, lightweight, waving in the breeze. I'm on a beach and the wind is blowing. You know, you want that feel of fabric. The other thing you wanna try to avoid, which was so hard for me when I was looking for fabric, see how like this is the outside, this is the inside, and the pattern is pretty much on both sides. What we wanna try to avoid is fabric that has white on the inside. Because I was looking through like the really nice print cottons, like the brushed cottons, but they all had white on the inside, which I don't think is bad, but I think when, you know, this blows in the wind and if it blows up, it just makes for a more like luxe look. If you don't see white, if you can see fabric. So after many searches, I found this. and I love it. And interestingly enough, it was in the denim section at the Joann's, but it's not denim at all. I think because it has like a denim tie-dye, maybe that's why they put it there. But this is the outside or the right side, and this is the inside. It's a little bit fainter, but it's not bright white. So I picked this. Now, this wasn't cheap. After kind of measuring how much fabric this one had in it, I just laid it flat and then measured. Kind of felt like it was 3 yards. It was 30% off. I do think it was $20 a yard. Ooh, I need 3 yards, 20, 40, 60. I'm not spending $60 on fabric for a skirt that I need to go home and make. Do I really need 3 yards? I took my measuring tape and I put it around my waist 1.5 times. One time around my waist was almost 1 yard. So then the half a time is a half a yard. So I was like, I bet I could get away with 2 yards. I told the girl, I think I need 2 yards. And then I said, I'm just trying to make a simple wrap skirt. Do you think 2 yards would be enough? And she's like, yeah, that'll be plenty. So I got 2 yards and it was 30% off. This fabric cost me $31.83. And I say, that's not bad for a skirt that I'm probably gonna wear a shit ton of times, considering I've had this one for at least 15 years. So good investment on fabric if you ask me. Okay, so now that you have your fabric home and you have your sewing machine or a sewing machine that you borrowed, it's time for us to cut this, which is the scariest, I know, but I think we're gonna be okay. What I wanna do is I wanna lay this out and have it folded in half. It already has its fold, you know, from being on the bolt. That makes it a giant rectangle. I wanna fold it the opposite way, so I have a giant square. So I'm gonna refold this, and I did bring my iron out in case I need to like press a new crease into it. This is pretty floppy, loosey-goosey, but I'm gonna lay this out and I'm gonna fold it in the opposite direction that it is now, because like I said, I want it to be more square. Now that we have that done, we need to figure out our waist measurement and the length that we want this skirt to be. Now, it technically is not a rectangle. It looks like a upside down rainbow. So where the waistband is, there is a slight curve, and then the bottom of the skirt, there is a slight curve. So we need to figure out how to make a rainbow out of a rectangle. I did Google how to find your waist measurement and cut that out for a skirt. What they say the magic number is pi, so 3.14. Because we want this skirt to wrap around our body 1.5 times, we actually need to measure our waist 1.5 times. So get your measuring tape, put it around your waist once, and mine's not big enough to go a half a time, so I'm gonna go to the 36 mark. I'm gonna restart here, and it's about 9.5, 10. So 36 plus 10 for me is 46. Now I want to take 46 and divide that by 3.14. Whatever that measurement is, that is going to be our waist measurement. And how we're gonna get that out of this is by doing a little fancy trick that I saw this one gal do. So the fancy trick she did was, now that you have your fabric laid out, folded in half, my crease is here. She wants us to take the crease end and fold it over so that we make an A out of the fabric. This right here is my top point of the crease. We need to hold the top corner, and we're gonna take the crease side fabric and fold it over into an A. So I want this crease to line up with this raw edge here. This fabric is so loosey-goosey, I'm gonna have a real hard time doing this. Jeez, that took me like 8 years to get this all flat. Oh my goodness gracious. But we now have our A shape. So remember your waist measurement, whatever it is, 1.5, then divided by 3.14. So mine's about 14, 14.5. Then we need to decide the length of our skirt. So what I did is I just stood up, I took my measuring tape and put it at my natural waist, then I pressed it down, and I want my skirt to go just below my knee. It looks like I want it to be like 25, 26-ish. So here's the thing. The more fabric that you purchase, like if you purchase 3 yards, the longer you're gonna have the ability to make your skirt. Since I only purchased 2 yards, my skirt length is going to be dependent upon where my bottom fold fabric is. Here, as opposed to the length of the fabric, which is way down there. Before you make any marks, any cuts, double check where your waist measurement is gonna fall and then see how much length you have. Like I said, if I were to get 3 yards of fabric, I would have more length to work with. But I didn't because I'm cheap. I know I only have from here to here to work with. If I take my measuring tape at the point of my fabric and I go to 14, like my 1.5 waist measurement said, I take that to 14, kind of mark there and take it down. That means my skirt is only gonna be 21 inches, which is just a little bit above my knee. I know I'm not gonna get enough fabric to go all the way below my knee, but maybe I could hit mid-knee. And considering I wrapped 1.5, I think we have a little bit of play in the waist. So instead of 14, I'm gonna mark my waist at 13. My overlap around my waist won't be exactly 1.5, but it's a wrap skirt. I think we have some play. I'm gonna pin my measuring tape to my top point. And I know I'm gonna do my waist at 13. Should be 14, but I want a little bit more length. Mark 13 there. Hold the top where the pin is, and then just kind of move your measuring tape around in like a pie shape and mark every so often. Okay, now that I've made those marks, I'm gonna unpin my measuring tape, and from those marks, I'm gonna measure down as far as I can go. And I know I can get 22 inches. So now I'm gonna mark 22 inches from each of my 13-inch lines. Okay, now that we have our waist and our length measured, now the scary part, we have to cut. All right, get your scissors and just go for it. It's fine, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So I'm gonna cut my waist. Done. Now I'm gonna go cut my length. Okay, yay, we have our skirt piece cut. And it's a nice rainbow. Now, from the fabric that we cut off, I want to make my ribbon, I'm just gonna go ribbon waistband. So from the full length of the fabric, like unfolded, the 2-yard part, I want to cut a waistband. So I looked at this, and this waistband is 2 inches. This is folded in half, so we know we at least need to have a 4-inch width. So I'm gonna cut my waistband to allow for seam allowance. I think I wanna play around with a little bit thicker than 2 inches, maybe 2.5. I'll cut it at like 5.5 to give me a little seam allowance, a little play. So I'm gonna do a strip from the whole length of my 2 yards. I'm gonna cut a 5.5-inch width, and it'll be 2 yards long. Okay, awesome. Now that you have your 1 2-yard waistband, or however many yards of fabric you got, since I got 2 yards, I want to have a longer waistband so that it can wrap and wrap and wrap around again. I need to cut another waistband that is 5.5 inches by 2 yards. Then I'm gonna take my 2 waistbands, sew a seam right here, sew them together so I have a strip of fabric that is 4 yards long by 5.5 inches wide. Now, if you bought 3 yards of fabric, you may not have to do this step of making an extra super long waistband, but because I only have 2 yards, I need to get it to go around and around again and then be able to tie. So I need to make my waistband a little bit longer, hence why I'm gonna cut another strip out of this scrap fabric. Okay, awesome. Now that we have our 2 widths of our waistband fabric, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take them and I'm gonna do right sides together. So the side that you want facing out, which is a little bit hard to tell on this fabric. I'm trying to not pattern match, but this has a lot of blue tie-dye on this end and neither of these do. So I think I'm gonna go with the side that has the more white. Put those together, put a couple pins in, and then we're gonna sew a straight line seam right down the middle of these two pieces here. So I'm pinned right sides together. I have my sewing machine ready to go. So we're just gonna put it on in. Pressure foot down. I think everything's good here. I'm gonna do a little forward and back to lock it in. Sew straight, forward and back to lock it out, and then we're done. Awesome, that was easy. Boom. Now, when I take my pins out, we've got one super long jumbo waistband ribbon. And now we can pin this to our skirt and start sewing. So basically, we know the center of our waistband because we just sewed a seam there. So I want to take the center of my waistband and find the center of the waist of my skirt. So make sure you know what your waist is as opposed to what your bottom is. Pin these together, right sides together. I'm gonna pin everything together. Now the seam that I've created, I'm gonna lay that flat. I should iron it flat, but I'll just lay it flat for now and pin it that way, and then lay this out, pin, 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 pin. Everybody stop pinning. I changed my mind. Again, I've never sewn a wrap skirt before. I just figured it'd be easy. But as I was pinning my waistband on, I was thinking, wait, if I have my waistband already pinned to the end of my skirt, how am I going to hem the ends of my skirt? Don't pin your waistband. What we need to do first is roll and hem each end, not the bottom, but each end of our skirt, because we don't want these raw edges. Because this is so loosey-goosey, I am going to iron my hem in, and I'm gonna do a rolled hem, because if I just hemmed once, I'd see the frays on the inside. So I wanna fold once and then fold twice, so I get a nice clean hem. So I'm gonna iron that in. I know, that sucks. Okay, great. I have ironed in my side hems, and now I just have to sew them closed. So, nice and crisp, double fold. So now, I'm gonna go ahead and sew a straight line twice. Okay, awesome. Now that we have our sides hemmed, now we can go back to pinning on our waistband. Okay, now that we have our waistband pinned to our skirt, we can sew another straight line from this edge all the way to this edge. One giant straight line. So get that in your machine, forward back to lock it in, sew a straight line, forward back to lock it out. Okay, awesome. I feel like we're almost done. So I have my waistband sewn to my skirt. Now what I need to do is the seam of my waistband, I want to press open. So I'm gonna go back to my iron, press this open. Then what I wanna do is as I'm pressing this open, I'm gonna carry that pressing to the part of my waistband ribbon that I have not sewn. So that creates a nice edge. Then after I have that sewn in, I'm gonna take the thickness of my waistband top edge and fold under a hem and crease that in. Then I'm gonna fold the whole thing in half, meeting my creased seam allowance edges together. Then I'm gonna run a stitch from the very edge of this ribbon all the way across, right in the ditch of where I sewed my waistband to my skirt, carry that all the way through, and then close up this end here. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Sheri, what are you gonna do when this is together and this is like this? Well, I'm just gonna tuck them in, iron them, and then sew them shut. And then all we need to do is hem it. And then we have a wrap skirt. Okay, so yay, I have pressed all of my seams. So what I did on the waistband, I pressed my seams waistband to skirt, pressed them open so I could get a nice flat seam. Pressing in my seams top and bottom of the extended part of the ribbon. Then I took all of that and folded in half, but tucking the seam from my skirt up into the waistband. So this is the inside of the skirt. You can't see any raw edges. They're all tucked up under the waistband. So now what I wanna do is I wanna sew all of that closed, making sure that I kind of stay in the ditch of where I sewed my waistband to my skirt. I know. It sounds difficult, but it's just one giant straight line. So you just wanna make sure when you get to the waistband and the skirt that you're capturing all of those edges of the fabric underneath so we don't have any raw edges. So I'm gonna go all the way down to the end of my tail where I have that together. I haven't pinned it closed yet, but I'm gonna sew and just keep going all the way. I'm gonna take my time. I'm gonna go slow because I wanna make sure that I'm doing it nice and precise. Part of me is wondering if I should do a basting stitch on the inside and then go along the outside, but that sounds like too much work. So I'm just gonna go slow and take it easy and sew one giant straight line. Okay, yay. Basically, we have a wrap skirt now. I mean, look at how cute. Outside, inside. All we really have to do is close up our tails by like folding in the ends, sewing another straight line, boom, shut on both of those. Then we need to just do a nice rolled hem at the bottom, hem the entire bottom. Then we have to figure out where we want to put our buttonholes so that we have a spot for our ribbon tails to go through. Now, if you didn't want to do the buttonhole situation, you could just forego that, but then I feel like the waistband of your skirt's not gonna lay as flat or as nice, but you could just do where you wrap it without a buttonhole. So let's say I have a buttonhole here. In reality, I would take this tail end and then slide it through the buttonhole so that it comes out about right here and then makes a nice flat waistband. But if you wanted to forego that, you could not do a buttonhole and then just wrap this around, put it over like so. But then see, it doesn't lay that flat right there and I don't like that look. So I wanna figure out how to do a buttonhole. But first, I'm gonna hem everything, get it all good to go so that it's a finished skirt and then figure out how to do a buttonhole. I think I'm gonna have to get my directions out for my sewing machine in order to be able to figure that out. Okay, I have sewn my hem and my waist ribbon ends closed. Technically right now I have a finished wrap skirt, but I am gonna try to do at least one buttonhole. 3 might be a little overzealous. I have marked where I want my buttonhole to be, and how I did that was I put the skirt on like I was gonna put it on. I took this side and put it to the side of my waist. Then I took this side and put it over, and where I could feel is where I put a pin in this side, and that's where my buttonhole's gonna go. So I read the directions of my sewing machine, and apparently there's a buttonhole foot, which I have attached to my machine. Then it tells me what to put the dial on. I don't know if I understand it, but I feel like I'm just gonna go for it. So your sewing machine, if you have one, hopefully it has directions where you can read how to do a buttonhole, because I don't think this is a teaching moment here. I think this is gonna be a learning moment. So thankfully, if it doesn't turn out, I can just unstitch the threads and then say, no buttonhole, skirt's done. We're supposed to sew across like this, a couple stitches. Then we switch the knob to number 2, and then it's gonna sew down one side. Then we go back to number 3 and stitch some bottom stitches, and then turn the knob to number 4 and stitch up the side. And then there's gonna be this thin gap in the middle, if all goes well, that we slice through, and there's our buttonhole. So let's go for it. Now, for all of you who are amazing sewers out there, you just keep your mouth shut. We're learning. I'm trying to teach myself here. And in turn, hopefully, you guys that aren't sewers, that are kind of self-taught like me, maybe this will be helpful. Maybe it won't. Maybe you'll want to avoid a buttonhole altogether. But I feel like we should give it a shot. So dial, number 1, do 5 or 6 stitches. Okay, now change it to 2. Now let it do its thing. Oh, it's doing it! Am I supposed to help it along? It's going cattywampus-y. But okay, now we switch to number 3. Now we switch to number 4. I guess we're done. Okay, I mean, I don't like my number 2 side, that's for sure, but I think we can work with that. It's a little sloppy. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little sloppy, but I think we can work with it. I mean, it's not the best. It's a little sloppy, but I'm going with it. So now what we do is the gap that's in the middle, which is a very thin gap, we're supposed to slice it. And I'm gonna use my seam ripper to just poke it through and then slice down. Oh, where it got away from me, it won't slice down anymore. But for the most part, we have a buttonhole. Yay, we did it. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. And this is actually gonna get covered up when we put our belt through it. So I'm not really worried about it because this little belt right here is gonna go through our little buttonhole here, and voila! We did it! Shall I go try it on? Guys, I have it on, and can't nobody tell me nothing. Are you ready? Here comes the final reveal. Dun 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 dun! Isn't it so cute? Now, my tails were pretty long, so I was able to wrap them like 1.5 times around my waist, and I just went with a little knot on the side. Here's my flap. I'm perfectly covered. Like I mentioned, if the wind blows, the inside's not stark white, so it just looks a little bit better, don't you think? And our buttonhole is right here, totally hidden. Waistband, flat, skirt, a little shorter than I wanted, but it's still okay. I love it. And it was so easy. Can you believe we did it? We made a so easy summertime wrap skirt. I know you guys didn't think I could do it. I mean, there was a minute there where I didn't think I could do it. But honestly, if you can sew a straight line, you can make this easy wrap skirt. And now that I know what I'm doing, if I see clearance fabric, what have you, I could just deck my closet out with 1,000,000 wrap skirts. Now, if I had to do it over again, I probably would have purchased 2.5 yards rather than just 2 yards so I could get a little bit more length out of it. I mean, it's fine, summertime, a little bit above the knee, but I kind of like it a little below the knee if you ask me. I didn't know at the time, and now I know. So if you are as tall as me, I'm 5'6.5", I claim 5'7". 2 yards will get you to just above your knee. If you want to go a little bit below your knee, maybe get 2.5 yards. Other than that, everything else is real easy. You know how to do your waist measurement. Make your fabric fold into an A, then take 1.5 times your waist measurement, divide it by pi, which is 3.14, and you're good to go. That was the hardest part. That actually wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was getting my hem even. It got away from me in some areas, but that's okay. It's even all the way across-ish, and it's fine. When it's blowing in the wind, no one's gonna know if it's like a little bit like this. I don't really care. But other than that, yeah, I love it, and I'm very, very excited. I love how thick I made the waistband. And you know what? Those sewers on YouTube are right. If you wanna sew a skirt, and you have a skirt you like, take that skirt you like, and use it as a pattern. Who knew? So for about $35 and half of an afternoon, you can make your own summertime wrap skirt. Are you gonna? Let me know in the comments below. That said, if you like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. Be sure to ring that notification bell so that you are alerted to all of the Real Life Friday videos I push out, which is every other Friday at 5:30 Pacific Standard Time. Make sure you share this video with your family and friends, and as always, thanks for hanging out.